Welcome back to the Freedom File. I'm joined by Associate Dean and Professor at Troy University, Alan Mendenhall, my longtime friend and colleague, to continue to discuss the Constitution as it pertains to the election. I get it, because a lot of our libertarian friends are voting for Donald Trump. They see merit in his election, and they see him as the lesser of two evils. But how do you react when he says things like, I want to amend the First Amendment so that it can be a crime to burn a flag, not your neighbor's flag, not the government's flag, but your own flag? Or I want the police to be able to beat the daylights out of somebody at the scene of a crime because that's a way to reduce crime.
Well, obviously, I don't like those statements. I agree with people who say you want to take Trump seriously, but not literally. Obviously, amending the Constitution requires 3/4 of the state to ratify an amendment. So something like that's just not likely to happen. I go back to the judicial appointments and the Supreme Court that Trump was able to add a conservative majority to. We have cases like Janus that deals with public sector unions and free speech. You've got a Second Amendment case like the Bruin case. You've got Dobbs that overturned Roe and Casey and returned the abortion issue back to the states. 303 Creative, which is an important religious liberty case. The Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard and UNC, which got rid of affirmative action.
Yeah, all right. I get the Supreme Court argument. How about this one? They both want to continue spending nearly $900 billion on defense, more than the 10 next countries combined, including North Korea, which has a bigger army, and China, which has a bigger navy, because we have 850 military bases around the world. Should we continue to fund all of that?
Well, I think that's highly problematic. If you're comparing the two, I think, Trump ordered the reduction of U.S. troop presence in Afghanistan and in Syria and did it less recklessly than Biden. He told his NATO allies that the U.S. was shouldering too much of a burden and that the European nations had to step it up and that the U.S. wasn't going to continue spending to bolster what Europe should be spending money on. So I think there's a stark contrast there as well. Trump said he wanted to end endless wars in the Middle East. And obviously, the United States is over $35 trillion in debt. We need to figure out how to stop spending money because we can't continue on this path.
Both candidates will give Netanyahu whatever he wants, irrespective of the slaughter and irrespective of the cost, even though we have no treaty with Israel obligating us to do it. Does any of that offend your constitutional sensibilities, my dear professor?
Well, I think that the United States needs to leave the Middle East to itself and to get out of all these conflicts in which we're not directly involved at all.
There we go. I'm smiling because you and I both know that treaties that the United States has written, to which we are signatories, limit our military activity only to those cases where there's a serious threat to American national security. And I would suggest to you that Iran and Gaza are no threats to American national security, and we shouldn't be fighting wars. Same with Russia, and we shouldn't we shouldn't be funding wars that don't affect us materially. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are pretty simple on that, which is I agree.
Okay, all right. So back to the Constitution. Should candidates be talking about willy-nilly amending the Constitution, whether it's in order to gain votes or because they seriously mean it?
Well, I mean, I think it's silly for a presidential candidate to talk about amending the Constitution. As I mentioned earlier, you have to, at least to even propose it, have a 2/3 majority vote in both houses of Congress or a constitutional convention, the Article 5 Convention of the States. And so this is just such a long shot that I don't see any president doing it by amendment. It can't be done by the president. It's not the role of the president under the Constitution. Now, presidents can exercise great power to influence policy. I find it ironic that the left keeps calling Donald Trump a fascist when the closest thing we've had to a fascist president was FDR, a president whom the left tends to like and celebrate.
No, on that we are fully agreed. But shouldn't members of Congress conform to the Constitution? Republicans have been just as bad as Democrats in increasing the welfare, warfare, regulatory surveillance state which controls us today.
I think that's right. I think that both parties have been complicit in that. Part of it is the growth of the administrative state. The administrative state has essentially become a fourth branch of government with a judiciary within it, administrative law judges, with the executive power, the ability to enforce the rules and regulations that get promulgated. And it acts almost unchecked by the other three branches of government. I mean, Congress actually likes that it's got this fourth branch of government because if you're a conservative, you can complain about the EPA and it gives you something to run against, but you don't actually have to do anything to stop the EPA, to rein it in.
You're right.
And so to me, it's this administrative state that is highly problematic. And although we have gotten rid of this Chevron deference standard, I still am suspicious whether we can rein in the administrative state.
The administrative state is alien to the Constitution. It isn't mentioned anywhere. And you're right, Professor. It's an excuse for Congress to pay for regulations that they don't actually enact, take the credit if it produces results they want, and blame it on somebody else when it produces results they don't want. Professor Alan
100%.
Mendenhall, always a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you very much for a great conversation. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we've gotten into the Constitution. Coming up next on the Freedom File, we'll get into the history. We'll be right back after this quick break.